and I would like to introduce Dr. Gabriella LaGreca. Um, we just had the most amazing conversation, and it's an area that I know very little of, and I assume a lot of people know very little of. But what you're doing is you are creating the next generation of educators in dentistry. And given the complexity of dentistry, the fact that generational change in dental materials, techniques, products is something like 73 days now. It's ridiculous. And, the focus that begins a lot of this is COVID. COVID, as horrible as COVID is, and we'll get out of it eventually, COVID has been a pivotal agent for change in dentistry. I can imagine some people may be offended by that, but that's the way it is. So your beginning, we talked briefly about where your educational passion began. That was mom and dad. And so they gave you your quote unquote moral compass as an educator. And you need that because being an educator comes with a lot of complexity. You're in an institution and you're dealing with people who have been established for years and you're trying to make change. Can you talk about your mom and dad?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me and giving me this opportunity and window to everyone's home, which I think it's an honor and a gift. And I hope I'm able to make your time worth it today and with things that we're listening and talking. But I love talking about my parents and they know that. So they gave me permission to do so. They're the great mentors. My dad is my first mentor. They're both educators. And they dedicated their career to education in their individual fields. And interesting enough, my dad is an engineer and my mom is a designer. So I remember when I was putting together my letter of intent to apply to pros because I'm a prosthodontist, I remember saying, okay, let me just come up with some sort of story, right, about me or like something why do I want to do prosthodontics? And the reality is that I grew up in a house of two teachers where one was always trying to make everything pretty and the other was always trying to make it functional.
Right. Wow.
Which looking back is really the concept of prosthodontics, right? So the influence of my parents in my life, I think it's incredible from today, but I think it allowed me or afforded me the opportunity to learn what it was to be a teacher from home. And then I was able to leverage that up to my brother and sister because I'm the oldest of three and we have a gap in age enough so they could be my students, so to speak. So I think I grew up.
Started at home.
Yes, it definitely did. Not that they were happy about it, but it happened. So yeah, I think that was a great gift. And it was the first, I guess, my starting as knowing that could be something for me. But you're going to be surprised. I never thought about being an educator when I was in dental school. And part of it is because dental school, I grew up in Venezuela and dental school in Venezuela is very stressful. Everywhere is stressful, but particularly in Venezuela, you have all of the things related with the country that just add a different layer of complexity to your life in general, not only to your education. You have to pay your patients to come. You have to pay for the dental treatment. So you have to almost like persecute your patients so you can ensure you can graduate. You don't graduate until you finish your requirements. So the whole experience was yet wonderful, but also very stressful. So I never thought that I could teach in an environment like that to be completely honest. So I guess that was never in my head at that time. But rapidly after graduating, I realized that the life of being in an office, just seeing patients alone wasn't really fulfilling. So after like 6 months or so, I started like, what should I do? And here I am now.
Right. So it's interesting though, we'll get into it obviously, but what I find fascinating is, as I said, you have a moral compass, like a uniquely moral compass. The whole premise of what you're doing right now is sharing and caring. Your objective in all of this is just something that came about. You saw the problem, you identified the problem, the gap between educators and clinicians, the training, the manner in which people were being educated. And somehow, like Irina, you formulated this amazing construct. We're going to talk about what you've done, but you created your own mindset for education, right? And so obviously somewhere along the line, when you were a postgraduate at Tufts, there must have been people that influenced you. I can't imagine. So who were those? Who were the people that really kind of set you on your path?
I had so many great mentors. It will be a dishonor to mention only a couple of them, but I'm going to go ahead and mention only a couple of them because we only have so much time. Right. So when I applied for residency, the director of the program was Hiroshi Hirayama, who is a Japanese prosthodontist training at Tufts. And his character was very particular. And people that know Dr. H, as we call him, they will remember this. Like his character was very strict, very Japanese and very square-minded. And that this is how the education should be. But at the same time, he had a side that it was fantastic to have as a student. If you wanted to do something crazy, I just call it crazy because it's maybe not scientifically proven or something that was not in the literature, and it's something that you thought about it and you put some thought process on it and you came out with a reason why you wanted to do it. You go, Dr. H, I want to do this. Oh, why do you want to do it? If you gave him a very good reason, he will let you do it.
He'll let you do it. Wow. He
will let you try. He will trust. He will have that trust relationship with you as a resident that to me was outstanding. Like I never experienced anything like that before. And it was my first encounter with establishing a mentorship relationship from the level of trust, which it's so critical.
Right.
So critical. And I'll bring it back later and I'll circle around this again about trust because I'm now working on a project that it's oriented to try to build competencies for students that are based on trust. But we'll get back to that later. But I think it's very important. It was very important for me to see that people can know you enough to a point of trusting you to do something because they believe is the best for your education. So he was very influential to me in that regard. And there were some others that influenced me in different aspects, of course, of my specialty in prosthodontics. Dr. Kiho-kan, who was the director later on when I graduated, and some of the other faculty that helped me and mentored me in different aspects. But definitely when I graduated, I noticed, as you mentioned, the gap. And what I mean by the gap, just for the audience that are listening, I'm a millennial by definition. I was born in 1985. I don't care saying my age. And at that point, I realized, I'm going to enroll to be a faculty because actually Dr. Hirayama, when I was in my second year of residency, he asked me, what do you want to do when you graduate? And I'm like, I guess I want to stay. I want to try to look my opportunities in the country. Venezuela's situation wasn't that great. Right. So he's like, okay, you're going to stay teaching because you have material for teacher. Like, what? Yeah, do I have one? Right. So, but I guess that was the first push. And I was teaching already because I was a teacher assistant. Okay. I needed to get the extra money. So I was working as a teacher assistant in the predoctoral clinic. So a lot of opportunities came to me with ADIA and all that just because of my exposure to the undergraduate clinic when I was a teacher assistant. So luckily, I think people through my life, they have been able to see in me things that I had that I didn't even know that I had. Right. And they were able to push me in the right direction. And I guess that's what mentorship is about. You have the light. I tell my mentees all the time that mentors are a lantern. You have the light and they just turn that light in the right direction so you can illuminate your path. But the light is within you. That's something you have. The mentor only turns it in the right direction. So they were able to do that with me. And here I am. Then after graduating, started teaching. And then going back to the gap, I'm the youngest one, right? So I cannot say much because who is this person? Like what experience he has teaching? She just graduated yesterday. So my nature, which is naturally introvert, I start quiet.
Oh, you're an introvert?
Yeah, that's a surprise.
Okay.
Surprise.
All right. Surprise. Okay.
I promise you, after this, I'll have to take a nap for like 5 hours because this will drain all my energy. I'm a social extrovert, but I'm introvert by nature. So I like these conversations. I enjoy sharing and all that for as much as I love it. I also love being quarantine for me was great at the beginning. Like if I don't have to talk or nothing, I'm fine too. So anyway, like this understanding that I had to stay quiet and observe what was going on around me and start noticing that the students are no longer anymore like I was a student, quiet or just observing or even curious and challenging things and all that. No, students have a different role, completely different. They're actually unengaged, detached, which to me was shocking. I'm like, you're paying all this tuition. Why you are not eager to be engaged, or why are you spending time on YouTube? Like I have students coming to me and say, oh yeah, I look it up in YouTube. Do you know how to do that? No, yes, I do. Have you done it before? No, I haven't. How do you know how to do it? I look it up in YouTube.
YouTube. Yeah, the ultimate education, YouTube.
Yeah.
An unvetted education.
Yeah, exactly. And my answer, which I mean, not nice, but I will say like, you're paying all this tuition to go on YouTube. You're really not making a good deal here. Which they will be shocked. And I'm like, let me just get you to the clinic and now you're going to see it live. And next time even if you look at YouTube, don't tell me, you look it up in YouTube.
So I'm curious, everybody talks about it. Again, I don't know who everybody is, but there is the assumption that Tufts, for example, you walk out of Tufts owing $500,000 by the time you've gone through undergraduate, basically. Living in Boston is not cheap. Traveling home, whatever it is not cheap. Just sustaining, whatever it happens to be. Even just have a social life is not cheap. Plus, you're laying out whatever it is, 80,000, I think, a year at Tufts.
Yes, it wasn't that much when I studied, but now it's about 80,000 a year. Mm-hmm.
But you also have to buy your own instruments, right? You have to equip yourself.
No, they actually give you a whole kit, especially in Prost residency. The only thing that I had to bring was my camera, which was good. It was a big relief, but the package included the instruments.
Okay, but that's still 350,000, pushing 400,000.
Yeah. Which is about $500,000 by the time you graduate, and with life's cost and all that.
So that's how you're graduating. And so how much of this sort of quiet, this withdrawn, is just realizing that, yes, I'm going to get out. I'm going to end up with a bit of uncertainty in terms of being able to practice autonomously. I'm going to end up either with a DSO or, part of a larger practice, and I'd have to climb through the hierarchy to ultimately be a partner. Is this ever expressed to you that there is this, going to dentistry today comes with a certain element of anxiety, financial and otherwise?
For the dental students that I mentor, yes. Yeah. I see them more exposed. For the postgraduate residents, not as much, because half of our residents are international students.
Okay.
And they have a different, of course, level of depth when they come to postgraduate. So it's a little bit different, I guess, because they are already prepared. Many of them have been preparing for years to this point. So they know already that they will have X responsibilities. Some of them are sponsored by their governments, some of them are sponsored by their parents. Perhaps for me, and I noticed that difference as well. When I study, my parents were paying for my education. So for me, I had a calculator that every year I'll know exactly what the cost of a day was.
Right.
And all of my arguments with people were around whether I'm making enough of my $575 a day that I'm paying. So if I'm sitting in a seminar, and I remember even having this argument with one of my juniors residents when we having seminar presentation. And this guy did nothing. Like, he presented like a very poor prepared presentation. And I've been always very strict about quality. Quality is something that is extremely important to me because it shows who you are. Mm-hmm. And, we talked about this, like I prepare for this chat, like I will prepare for my podcast. Like, I want to make sure that whatever you do for others is at the highest quality that you can provide. Right. So they present this presentation that it was really not well prepared. And I remember I stand up and said, you know what, this is not worth it, my $575 a day that I'm paying for you to educate me. So yeah, the cost it becomes very important. It was important to me. And I feel like just so many stresses go through the mind of a dental student that money is just one of them. Right. The other one is just getting through dental school.
Right.
Graduating, trying to maximize. For a postgraduate student in Prosthodontics is getting their boards so they can become board certified. So I guess money is part of it, but it's not the part that they will talk about with the faculty.
So I have a question as an educator. When I went through dental school, which was dinosaurs were roaming the earth, I had 4 years to learn how to be a dentist. So do the people today, right? They have 4 years to learn how to be a dentist. Mm-hmm. What I learned in dentistry and what you need to learn today to be competent and effective, understanding digital computers, 3D planning, and this, that, and the other. How can we do this in 4 years?
Yeah. To be honest, I don't think we can. That's why we're pushing people to do higher education more and more. Before, I think you, as a general dentist, you will be a competent general dentist. Right. And I don't want to say now we're getting incompetent general dentists. We're just getting people with certain level of understanding of what my dad will call kilometers of knowledge, but with 1 inch of depth.
Kilometers of knowledge?
Kilometers of knowledge with 1 inch of depth.
With 1 inch of depth. All right.
So then if you want to dig in deeper, then you have to go into postgraduate education, which is the reality now for dentistry.
Yeah, I think so. I don't undergraduate dentists. I would think. I remember. Let me see if I can remember this correctly. When I was in postgraduate in endodontics, the director of the program, I was crazy. I was like, can I learn photography? Can I learn this? It just, I had been in practice. I had a family, and it was like, I'm going to suck up every bit of the marrow that I possibly can. I made that commitment. But his point was two things. A lot of people that graduate, they graduate and they practice for 20 years, but they practice that first year 20 times, right? And obviously there are other people who do different. And then there's also a question of your 100% is not somebody else's 100%. So the expectations that you have as an educator, it must be complex. So a lot of it is personality, a lot of it is culture, a lot of it is gender. So how do you structure your programming to cope with all of those differences, or do you make that effort to structure it differently?
I do make a conscious effort to customize my education because I believe my students deserve that. I go to work every day and I think my students are paying my calculator again
There
this
you
much daily. There you go, a day. How do I make their educational experience worth their time, their money, and their effort? Whether they want to put the effort or not, I'm still 100% to whatever the 100% means for that particular person, which is a reason why I enjoy teaching in postdoctoral more than I did enjoy teaching predoctoral. I was teaching predoctoral students for about a year before I turned to teaching postdoc. But I realized that I'm a happier teacher when I teach residents because I'm able to customize more. One of my frustrations, particularly at Tufts, is that we have a big group of students. So I used to be the course director for occlusion in predoctoral clinic. So I have 217 students.
How much?
217
Wow.
in one classroom to teach
A
occlusion
lot of
first
people.
semester of dental school. So it's like a hit or miss. So I will have my sessions that were like highly, this was back 5 years ago when I started teaching. I have had these sessions highly interactive, and my students that they're now dentists, they always actually reach out to me on Facebook or any other social media. Oh, I remember that lecture when you did the TMJ with people, because I'll bring people to the stage and we'll make like a human TMJ. So I could explain about TMD and whatever. Like I'll always come up with a different approach so I could engage them, because I could tell already by the time I graduated, I have to earn their attention and I have to keep their attention after I earn them. And impossible to do in a room. I'm going to lose 30% for sure of those 200 people. Yes. And I will be lucky if I get 10% that are really, really good at the message. So what I did is I constructed my time. So I will have sessions in my office hours that people use to prepare the lectures or to whatever, to quiz their exams and evaluate. I'll use my office hours to do small group sessions.
Okay.
So I'll put them together in groups and I'll bring them in groups of 5. And I will basically repeat the material in those 5 people. Like I will do multiple groups of 5. And of course, I'll have to prepare the other stuff in my free time that I already use my allowed time.
Do you have free time?
Weekends.
Weekend.
Yeah. So, but at least I felt that was more effective and students appreciate it. So I guess I've always been a customizer because I believe that education has to be tackled to the needs of the student, not to the needs of the institution, not to the well-being of the faculty. Not that none of those things are important. Everything is important. But at the end, I always go to work thinking my first customer is the student. Yes. They need to receive an education that is a high quality education. They need to learn what they need to learn, not necessarily what they want.
Right.
But I cannot force them to learn in the way I teach.
Right.
So yeah.
I'm curious, okay, if I polled 217 students, what would they say about you?
The 30% that didn't get the message, probably, I'm not sure. Majority of my students were very grateful. Okay. And I want to say this very humbly. I've been lucky to have wonderful students. My whole short educational career, people still reach out to me. I was on the phone on Friday with one of my former students because when he has a hard case, he calls me and like they don't feel afraid of reaching out after graduating because they know I'm there for them. And
I think that's what you're doing is beyond impressive. It's fantastic because you've taken advantage of technology, but you've done more. What you just described is neurolinguistic programming in every sense of the word. You develop asynchronous material. Obviously, your programs are synchronous. And essentially, now, because of COVID, how much online do you have to do?
Well, at the beginning of COVID, and this is a very interesting question, everybody was so free. Oh, I have like Zoom invitations all the time to do yoga online with my friends and to do all these activities. I was working 12 hours a day, 14 hours a day, because going back to the gap that I didn't really get into detail, in my department, I'm one of the youngest faculty. And as such, I realized soon when I graduated that I had a responsibility to bridge the gap between senior faculty and my millennials or Generation C students. We can no longer hold the position of say the student is wrong or the student is not making the effort. We have to leverage their abilities and their capacities and their generation abilities and capacities to utilize education. So when all this thing happened with COVID, of course, we were all observant and we all came up with assumptions. And you talked a little bit about assumptions. And I think when you go on for those familiar with the logic model, when you're going to solve a problem or you encounter a situation, everybody goes with a pool of assumptions. And our assumptions with COVID and dentistry were some, and were particularly with COVID and education, where we cannot teach online. We cannot teach prosthodontics online. There's no way I can overcome the clinical time. Like all these things. Oh, the students are going to be losing. Everybody's going to be losing. This is misery. We're going to be out of this in 2 weeks. Everybody had their assumptions and they were all right. That's everybody from their point had the right to feel that way. But like I always do in life, I challenge my assumptions. What if I can teach online? What if I can overcome the clinical challenge or the clinical time loss with a different activity?
Right.
What if I could really turn things around? So I had the support of the program director at that time, and I guess he was also overwhelmed with everything that was going on. So and he noticed I really wanted to try to do something. And once again, I don't know if because he believed in me or because I pushed very hard. And he said, "Okay, do whatever you think we have to do." Right. And I start turning all of curriculum into online platform. We have actually at school already a website or a host for our online courses called Canvas, and it's an educational learning platform. And a lot of other learning platforms are out there, but that's the one that the school utilizes. But we never use it because all of our sessions used to be synchronous and in classroom. Right. So I took all of our courses and I created a space on the website for each one of the courses. I took all of the presentations that we used to give, upload them, organize them in modules. So literally I transformed all of our curriculum in an online version, which is part of what you saw in the publication that I ended up doing afterwards. So along with that, I start surveying the students. I want to know how the students felt about things. Okay. How were they dealing with the situation? How can I involve them as part of their education? What do they think it will be useful for them to get right now that we have the time that they couldn't get before? Not calling it to overcome the clinical time, just to say something that you were missing before, that this could be a perfect time for you to get. Right. And I started listening to them, and then collecting what they thought that it was useful. And I put together a couple of new courses that we didn't have before. And one, we call it Clinical Q&A. And in that course, basically, they wanted to have all of the faculty together one day talking about clinical complexities. But very simple procedures. How do you pack the core? I'll say I pack it this way, the other person will pack it that way, and then somebody else show a video how they do it. And then we start doing that week by week, collected from questions that the residents will put together. So engaging them as part of the educational experience and target the objectives to what they needed at that time. Okay. Along with that, we did other activities too. We did like more social activities. I created like a photo challenge. So people will daily send photos of whatever they were doing in quarantine. So different layers of trying to customize first. Yes. And also utilize technology to our benefit, to the point that now we still teach synchronous because we have the limitation of capacity in the building. So all of our didactics are still online. And now we have all the platform ready. Everything is ready. Now everybody knows how to connect on Zoom. Everybody knows how to upload their slides on the space for the courses. So we are 10 years forward in only 8 months.
Well, that's the interesting part, isn't it? COVID pushed teledentistry. Teledentistry would have taken a decade to kick in, but not anymore, which is what was interesting. The lady I just spoke to, Maria Kunster, teledentistry she's taking it international. and we're going to talk about your podcast, which I think is really cool. I've been doing this for 9 months, and I never bought myself a microphone like that. Now you've stimulated me, right?
I can give you all the tips about all equipment
There
and
you go.
stuff.
So what's interesting in all of this is what are they using? Blackboard, Zoom, Microsoft has Teams. They're using Padlet, which I think is what is Padlet? That's another aspect of interactivity. What you and Irina have done is you broke it down on a modular basis. So essentially what you've done is you've taken the Harvard business model or the Wharton business model and transferred it to dentistry. So everything is a case, right? They're not learning, it's like learning sciences when I went to school. It's like, you take like a year of basic sciences and then there's no correlation between what you're doing in dentistry and the basic sciences. It was just like a year of sciences and then boom, that's it. How much you remembered of oral pathology, who knows? But you're doing this now on a case basis. How have you restructured your program to do this on a case basis?
I think naturally in prosthodontics, we do a lot of things case-based by experience. That's about how I learned. And we just need to structure it more. And that's what we have been doing so far. And that's actually the contribution that I will have on the Delta program that I'm working with Dr. Dragan and the Incarnate Box. I will bring in the case based learning and how to prepare case studies and things like that. Because I think in prosthodontics, since everything we do is complex case management and full mouth assessment, I think it's natural for a prosthodontist doing their training to learn case-based. It's very little that you will isolate unless you're doing literature review. And then in the literature review, you will just focus on the data. Everything else we learn case-based. So the only thing that we needed to do was structure it in a way that we could, as an educational experience, it could completely circle back. So when you do a well-constructed educational experience, you have to think about the different aspects, including feedback, evaluation, and all those things, because you can be just doing can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. You can be just doing the case and presenting the case and discussing the case, but if you don't have the interaction of the resident having to present the case, then analyzing, discussing, expressing, receiving feedback, and then circling back, then the educational experience is not complete. So what we have been doing with now that we have the time, or we had more time, we are building activities that are more constructive into educational objectives.
Okay.
So we're getting students more engaged for them to do their presentations, for them to prepare almost every course, which before it was only for some courses.
Right. Okay.
Now in every course, let's say perhaps I have a course of implant prosthodontics with Dr. Andre de Souza, who is a periodontist. So what we do is he does a lecture one week. Let's say today he gives a lecture of suturing. Then the following week, the resident have to present a case scenario, and they have to explain how they will do the incision, how they will do the suturing. Right. So that actually allows the student to circle back to the information, study the information without having a quiz, because quiz is only on one way of evaluation. This is a different way of evaluation. They can present and expose to others. And that also becomes a library of cases for them when they are studying or when they are treating their cases. They can go back to the Canvas space and look through the presentations of the interactions, and they can see that again, which I think is priceless.
I think so. So basically, rather than just book learning, because you have asynchronous and synchronous training, do you feel that's going to make a qualitative difference in the student because they can reference back to something they're familiar with and just build on it? Is that the expectation, that because they can look back, at least they've got a baseline to work from? And once they've got that baseline, then they can raise their bar substantially. Is that the hope for objective of all this?
I guess that's one of the assumptions. And the other assumption is that when I'm online, I'm not getting 100% of the attention. No. And I know that. And that actually forced my classes to be a lot shorter. Like initially, all of our classes in classroom were 2 hours, sometimes up to 3 hours for a seminar. Everything online, we have faculty meetings, and I told them, guys, we have to do everything below an hour. And they were like, what? I'm like, okay, you have 15 minutes for your important information. Everything else is blah, 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 blah. So you decide how long do you want your blah, blah, blah to be. Right. So, and we kind of we came into an agreement of doing 90 minutes, and then some of them we do an hour. But everything that I have only on my own, I never do more than 30 minutes. And that's my commitment. I do 30 minutes so I can allow constructed time for asynchronous. Because something else that I've noticed is that people are doing asynchronous activities, but they're asking the student to do it on their own time. you're not constructing time on their schedule to do asynchronous sessions. You're expecting them to go on, I don't know when, the weekend or at lunchtime.
Right, right.
So I have allocated time, let's say 2 hours for this session. What I will do is I will do 1 hour is lecture, or 45 minutes is whatever synchronous session. And I will tell them the other hour is going to be for your asynchronous work. Whether you want to do it in that hour or not, that's your decision. But at least I build time on their schedule so they can jiggle around with the other things and then hopefully have time to cover the asynchronous component as well.
Is there an advantage, given the asynchronous aspect of the education, to have study groups formulated?
Yeah.
I know it's a lot of students, but basically, it's almost like breakout sessions at a meeting, right? So
Yes.
is that a benefit to what you're doing as well? Has that sort of, again, ensured that there's a greater understanding because they're almost competing with each other in the study group?
For our groups in the postgraduate, it's easy because we only have 15 residents. So it's very easy to do, and we do it all the time. We actually do everything in groups. So their presentations are not individual presentations. They have to pick a one person to present at the end, but they have to work together, which teach them as well collegiality, communication, and even working with peers. So I think there is a lot of learning that can come from the working in groups. Of course, depending on the size of the classroom, that could be more or less useful. But I even challenge people to think about this on large groups, because in the Harvard Macy course for educators in health professions I'm doing, we're 120 people. And I'm part of at least 4 different groups. And these groups are like about 5 people each. And I meet with them, like some of them during that week that we were together, we will meet daily 2 hours with each group, or an hour and a half, depending on what the task was. But all of the activities were built. Probably 60% of the time was built into group activities, and the rest was just like everyone together.
You mentioned Harvard Macy. Can we talk about that? It's a program for educators in health professions by the Harvard Macy Institute. You got this as a scholarship?
Yeah, I got us a scholarship from the Tree Fund, which is a fund that Tufts has for from the Department of Faculty Development.
Right.
So I applied to that, thinking that I've been looking for things, and I guess that's where the dragon comes again into play. She was a scholar of that program, and our dean, Dean Karen Box, was also a scholar of that program a few years back. So we have people in our school that have been involved with that program for many years before.
So tell me what leadership means to you. I'm sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but everything that you're doing is leadership. But one person's perspective on leadership is not necessarily what another person's is. You said early on when we were talking before that, the whole crux of what you do is sharing. And I mean, there are educators, I don't know that they were focused on their research or whatever it was. It depends on whether it's generational or not. But everything that you and Irina are doing seems to be very focused on the term. But it must mean something special to you. And what would that be?
To me, be a leader is being able to inspire others through action.
Right.
I don't do anything for recognition. I'm not motivated by money. The only thing that fires my heart and my actions is giving back, providing, sharing, being there for others. And if in the mentorship, being the mentor that I always wish I had. And I had great mentors, but being like them and even better. So that to me is leadership, being able to carry others through their own fire and inspire and lighten that fire on them.
Wow. Interesting. Did you take courses? I mean, obviously a lot of what you've done is directed at it, but did you train to do that? Lately, there's so many courses on leadership. I mean, you can, in the good old days, there was the Ritz-Carlton. They used to teach you how to be, to lead teams, that sort of thing. Does Tufts teach this to the students in a sense because it's invaluable in clinical practice, obviously. It's invaluable in research teams. So, what you feel, as I said, it's a sharing and a caring. How easy is that to transfer that to a student today?
That is a great question. And to the question, particularly whether I train, I did a training course with ADIA, which was a summer leadership program they have for young educators in dentistry. Mm-hmm. That was a week training, but I do a lot of reading on my own. I think no training, all trainings are great. No trainings are good if you don't do the homework, like anything, right? So I think the work of leadership or learning anything in particular requires a lot of self-discipline and doing the work and
Right.
practicing what you preach. So I think I had a lot of opportunities to practice leadership and people that have given me opportunities to be on my own, doing my thing, which have allowed me to exercise that. And I hope that we do that through our students as well. We have a lot of student organizations, and the faculty advisor for our student organization for ADIA at Tufts, and they run it as any other organization at the national level. They have a board, they have a structure, they have monthly meetings, and they really try to exercise leadership at the more, I guess, regional or local level of their dental school through their classmates. So there are built opportunities for the students to learn these skills. But I think a lot of that will come from learning from mentorship. And that's why I'm very strong on mentorship. I think that's probably the best way of learning and progressing someone's career.
So I pulled the ADIA, ADIA.ADEE, which I didn't quite understand. I know this is the Voice of Education while he produces it, and I grabbed Irina's paper, December 2019. And the thrust of ADIA, obviously, is to create curricula, summary of dental education and patient care. I have to admit, I read this, and I still don't understand it. Okay.
Don't worry about it. A lot of things I still don't understand, but I always nod my head.
My goodness. But basically, it was interesting because it was the American Dental Education Association and the Association for Dental Education in Europe. Is it blended? Is there a similar constant between the two? Or is it more difficult for Europeans to adopt an American type? Or is it just basically education is education, whatever part of the world you happen to be in?
I guess the best person to answer that would be Irina. She is probably, as I said, I try to bridge a gap. She's actually trying to bridge that gap between American education and European education, trying to get these two organizations work together. Right. There's a lot of things in common, and there's also a lot of differences. And there are things that we could leverage from one organization versus the other. My impression from at least ADIA, or American Dental Education Association, is that we have a lot of resources available. The organization is very resourceful and counts with a lot of funds to these things to get pushed forward. So you have multiple layers. When I first started getting involved with ADIA, and still until now, I know probably 70% of their products or the things they offer, because it's a really multifaceted organization that really tackles different levels. Right. One of them, which I'm more involved about, and we talked about it before, is the ADCFP, which is American Dental Education Fellowship Program.
Right.
What that is a fellowship program of 1 year, out of which a dental student or a resident gets exposed to what the career in education will be through the hand of a mentor. So the goal with this program is basically have the opportunity for any dental student or any postgraduate resident to explore an academic career before they graduate. Because academic careers, and I think that's something we can all agree with, none of us learns how to be an educator. We all learn how to be dentists, right, or periodontists or endodontists or whatever it is. We really don't learn how to teach. And I think that's something that is lacking in our curriculum in general. So incorporating some, and I know that not everyone goes to dental school thinking they want to teach. And I understand and respect that deeply. But I always challenge that question by saying, what about when you go out and practice? You'll have to teach your assistant. You'll have to teach your staff. You always have to teach at some level. And this is a conversation that I had with actually my first interview for the podcast, Dr. Alex Vendayan, who has a leadership position at Boston University. He told me that, and he says that all the time to people when they say, I don't want to teach. So I think the value of teaching is the same as leadership. You need to have opportunities and get exposed to experiences that teach you how to lead certain situations, teach you how to educate others in certain situations, how to mentor others. How are you going to be a mentor if you have never been a mentee?
Exactly.
It is really important to be in that position. And part of being a student is the same. We were all dental students, but we were never online students. Before COVID, I never took an online course because I thought I couldn't. That's one of my assumptions. Right. So what was my first reaction after all this happened? I contact we have faculty development resources available. I contact our faculty development department. And I said, you know what courses are out there at the university level that I can take to learn how to design online courses? I don't know how to be an online student.
Mhm.
So actually, I got enrolled in a whole summer program that it was designed for designing online courses. So I became a student. And I
Yes.
was doing that on my own time in the evenings. And I was doing projects and working with groups and all that. That experience was priceless
Yes.
just for the fact that I became an online student. And I could tell, or I could really sense from my own experience what it was to be connected for 90 minutes versus what it was for 30 minutes,
Right.
and how to make an effective class online versus what would not be an effective class online. So all of those layers it just piles up. So I've done a lot in 2020, if you ask me.
I'm sure it sounds like it. What interests me, especially with online, is there's, aside from the sort of active listening, engagement, there's a need for charisma enhancement. So I'm looking at you right now with your microscope, your microscope, with your microphone and the background. How much of that do they train you with, charisma enhancement? Because that's a very big part of online. When you watch a lot of these programs, people are sitting back like this, or you can barely see their head. I mean, that is you're almost becoming like a newscaster, right? You have to develop an online persona. Did they teach you about that?
No, then you know how I got exposed about that? Because my partner does a lot of acting, and he's a doctor. He's an MD, but he does a lot of public speaking. And out of his public speaking training, one of the part of the training was acting. And I learned through him that performing is one of the things that you have to do as a teacher.
Right.
The thing is that now we're asking, and I was having this conversation with Harvard Macy scholar, and I was telling them how now you were being basically an actor in a theater your whole life.
You are,
Now
absolutely.
you are put on movies. If you ask an actor what it is to be in a theater versus what it is to be in a movie, the ones that act on movies, they don't act in theater and back and forth, because it's completely different.
Right.
So we cannot pretend just because we're teachers in a classroom, we can be teachers online. That just doesn't happen like this. It's not the same thing. And part of challenging the assumptions and realize that there are things to learn. This has been a wonderful opportunity for many teachers. I've been seeing many of them just completely transforming their educational career because of this opportunity.
Right.
But I've seen others that are not doing as well. And it's part of charisma, personality, whatever it is a personal component. But I want to encourage people to be empowered by the fact that none of these things happen casually. I didn't wake up in the morning and I have all my mic and my background and my light installed for me to look this way. I look online, I took courses, I ask people, I invest, I practice, and I did that again all over as many times as it was needed until I felt that I could be me. I could bring a product to my students. I could bring a product to my audience with a podcast that it was worth their time and worth their attention.
What's interesting is I saw a presentation this week. Sally Safa is a Toronto-based dentist. She calls herself the mindful dentist. She talks about, basically work-life balance, emotional health, this sort of thing. But what was fascinating was she had learned how to present online. So the slide material, in contrast to somebody who takes their PowerPoint that they used in a synchronous situation, it was linear synchronous, they just transferred it to Zoom. Doesn't work. You have to minimize the text. You have to expand the graphics. You have to be very concerned about color backgrounds, fonts. Mm-hmm. It's like, like you're right. There needs to be an actual course in the optics of how you present online. You cannot teach even clinical material. You can't have this overlap and, reduce the opacity in the background. It doesn't work. It's not attractive. It's not compelling. And quite honestly, it's disruptive. You're watching, you're getting confused because it's like watching Transformers or something on television, right? You're a kid. Oh, it's the noise. It's a whole different ballgame. That brings me to, we're quizzing you now. This is an exam. I didn't do this on purpose, but I'm giving you an exam.
Okay, so I didn't come prepared for this.
No, you couldn't. This is sort of like a pop quiz, right? Okay, so summary of dental education. This is the demands of the contemporary educator. So when you look at the technical part of what you're doing, so it's augmented reality, virtual reality, haptic technology, robotic patient simulation, hyperlinked 2D and 3D imaging. Good Lord. 3D printing, e-portfolio, VR complement mannequins, 3D printing again, 3D printing simulating tissue, and collaborative learning technologies. How the hell do you learn that in the course of basically probably a year, 24 months? That's staggering technological change. And it's 3D printers. A year or two ago, it was a $2,000 printer. Now people are willing to commit to larger and larger printers, even though the price is coming down. Virtual reality, augmented reality. You can pick up your iPhone and the kids are all playing around, what's his name? The purple dinosaur is coming around and doing that kind of stuff. How are you going to, do you have support teams at the school to help you with this?
We have many working groups, and we have many committees that take care of the different layers and how can we involve some of these things. But the reality is that none of that is yet fully implemented. We're all exploring as it continues to change. Luckily, as I said when we spoke early, being teaching in postgraduate allows me the opportunity to have these things firsthand because we have a smaller group. So it's a lot easier to implement a lot of these things with our students. Perhaps in prosthodontics, we have been doing guided surgery for many years now, but now we're printing all of our guides, we're printing all of our provisionals, we're really doing a lot of digital part, and we did for maybe 3-4 years. All we're looking at now is how can we leverage that to final restoration, how can we leverage that to maxillofacial prosthetics that we also do. So I think it continues to evolve. And I'm not master on any of those things. And I think we have wonderful people at Tufts that really care of each one of the aspects. And we're all looking in to see how we can implement that into our clinical practice through an educational experience. Because at the end, that should be the objective. So I think the hardest part of academia right now is that we are in a very dynamic environment, that we have to teach things that we are also learning. Okay. So how can you really teach something that you're just learning about?
No, you can't.
You can't.
That's part number one. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. That's part number one. Irina, if you're listening, do we give her an A? We give her an A. All right. So in classroom learning, once again, what's a flipped classroom?
Okay, a flipped classroom is an experience in which you have the students being teachers and the teachers being students back. So we talked about having the student be more responsible of educational learning as well. So there are different actually study designs and a lot of different experimental groups talking about what are the best classroom settings depending of the course you are giving. But there are a lot of groups at Tufts doing flipped classroom. It really depends on what the nature of your course is and whether you can have the student teaching. And having the opportunity of having the student teaching back can be through a case base, as we spoke early. It could be through a process on which you have to prepare a lecture. So having the student in a more active role in their education. And just to bring it back briefly to what I said before, you don't have to even know anything about how to run a Zoom or how to even prepare a lecture. You can have a student, a teacher assistant that helps you, and they're learning how to teach, and you're teaching them things about didactics that you know. And the student might be helping you to do a good presentation that is nice and appealing just because you don't know how to use PowerPoint. I've seen faculty leveraging the relationship with their students to that level, and it's been nourishing both ways. The student learns a lot because they're having an opportunity to teach, and then the faculty learns a lot because they're having somebody helping in the technological aspects that they are not so familiar with.
Right. You're very kind. We're not done, Irina. Just hold on for a moment. I know what it was. When I interviewed Irina and then I interviewed Sitara Lavasani not long after, they were both talking about educational models, and then they were able to quiz the students at that time. So they could determine whether or not they had to go back and revisit the discussion. So essentially online quizzes. How did the students react to that?
I think most people appreciate that.
Really?
Because it becomes an opportunity for us. What we do is we incorporate a lot of polls during the sessions. Right. So that way nobody has the pressure of giving an answer or asking a question.
Right. Okay.
Of the group. Okay. So that way we could get like a sense of what the group is feeling about a particular topic or whether the message was clear. And then having those polls every, 10 minutes or every objective of the class that you have gives you a sense of whether the class actually understood the topic or whether you have to revisit a point back. So it's another way of building feedback that it feels less direct, because reality is that nobody likes to be on the spot. And how it is in a classroom, it's like that person always holding their hand up.
Yeah. There's always the person in the front row. Me, ask me, ask me. I know that's kind of interesting.
But you know what? That person that is always a me in Zoom is very quiet. Because what I did notice is that Zoom favors a lot introvert people because by nature they are quiet and I don't know whether they feel in a safe space. I even experienced that for myself. I'm always like this, I guess, class or online, but my introvert students are doing a lot better, or they did a lot better when we were doing only asynchronous sessions, when the very extrovert ones were feeling down, because this was emotionally kind of challenging for them too. Wow. So the ones very introvert were managing the chat, were posting the questions, were like coordinating with their classmates, when the others were like, even the camera was off. So it's been an interesting thing.
It's it's 180 degrees from what was traditional when you were doing synchronous. Couple of things. This is the important part now. Patient care. Okay. One of the things that I think is, there's no psychology in most undergraduate programs. They don't give you a semester on the psychology of interaction with patients. However, with online learning, you are able to understand artificial intelligence and what that brings to you. And it's interesting, everybody I've spoken to that's dealing with AI or whatever, they all say the one benefit of artificial intelligence is that it opens up the time for patient care. And as a result of sort of the digital work being done by the machine, in a sense, it allows you the opportunity to be more empathetic, nurturing, caring, reactive. And as Maria just pointed out, we're all decked out in PPE now, right? Masks, shields, whatever, So what are you doing to teach the students how to be engaging when they're covered in PPE clothing? You can only see the eyes realistically, right? Mm-hmm. Well, the eyes are important. They tell you a lot of things, but body language, how you hold yourself, proximity, too close. How are you teaching the students to deal with these changes because of COVID and obviously what's gone on before and will continue on now?
Yeah. I think going back to, one has to learn first how to deal with something before you're able to teach something. Myself, I did struggle with that in my patient care setting because I'm a very close person. I'm a close person with my patients. I'm the one that hugs them. And then I have that kind of relationship with most of my patients. So empathy, it's one thing that is not physical. And empathy is the one thing that I think has not been affected with COVID. So what I've been doing myself, and I first went through this on my own, like how can I interact with my patients? How can I still make them feel welcome, care, appreciated, and such when we're having certain space and when I have to almost yell for them to listen to me. Once I was able to realize that I still have to be me and listen attentively, ask open-ended questions, and being empathic to whatever they were telling me, not fixing, just listening attentively.
Right.
And then I was able to, and the way how I teach that is through example. I do like to engage into a lot of these situations with my residents because I see that there's a lot of people teaching clinical skills, but not so many taking the time to teach the human skills that are so important for patient care in any medical field. But now I feel more than ever because people are very sensitive. They have a lot of emotions about everything that is going on. We all do in the whole world. So I do take the time to sit down with the patient and the resident so they can observe my interaction.
Yes.
And it's not for a clinical procedure. It's actually never for a clinical procedure. It's either at the greeting at the beginning of the procedure or at the end of the appointment. And surprisingly, in that moment, I always get patients either to cry or to try to hug me or something because I'm able to connect. Why? Because I do that. I show empathy. I ask open-ended questions. And I realize that they need time just to talk sometimes. And they want somebody to attentive listening. So I teach
active listening. I always call it active listening. Is it attentive listening?
Yeah, active listening. Yeah, this is the same.
So my question is, do you feel that as a result of doing that, kind of bookending the approach and giving them the opportunity to articulate and allowing them that freedom by asking open-ended questions, do you feel they're assimilating more of the knowledge? Do they understand better, or are we still, we still have to obviously use some type of digital transmission of treatment planning and getting treatment acceptance. But when they're talking to you, do you kind of see a transition from somebody who has no real sense of dentistry to somebody who is at least the analogies that you presented. Is that one of the things that you're beginning to see?
Oh, I hope I wanna think so. I hope so. And I noticed that I'm able to do that on Zoom. And going back to your previous talk on teledentistry, I did a lot of teledentistry consultation when when we were locked down. I had a lot of patients in the practice that were still lingering on deciding on a treatment plan. So I had a good number of encounters online with few patients, and all of them actually got back to me either in written form as a form of a thank you letter, email,
Really?
whatever it was, just appreciating so much. They felt that that was an extra step I was doing. I was going beyond others.
Absolutely.
With what it was to me, service, that to me was like a human service.
Yes.
And many of the conversations were, to be honest, yeah, they were about dentistry, but I always ask about life because I think we're way beyond more than dentists. I like to connect with people. We're all people, and I think we build through connections. So taking that extra time, I think, makes people more willing to listen, therefore more willing to learn.
Okay, so now I'm going to move into, if I can find it. I assume I can. Okay, you tell me if you're seeing this. Are you? No.
I'm seeing your Facebook, yes.
You seeing, oops, is this that's not what I'm looking for. Let's get out of Facebook. No. I don't know what I've been looking at on Facebook, so let's stay away. So this is something that you talked about, the American College of Prosthodontics. This is a large component of mentorship in the ACP, correct?
Yes.
So Lyndon Cooper, I remember from a bazillion years ago, that's Chapel Hill, if I'm not mistaken, if he's still there, I don't know. Or is he now, no, he's at UIC, interestingly enough.
Yes.
Promoting research on social media, that's what caught my attention. You know, when you look at TikTok and Instagram, some of it is, well, whatever, you know, you got people doing weird things and this kind of, you know, this, that, and the other. But interestingly enough, people have moved away from Facebook. Facebook has kind of peaked, and I don't know whatever it is, but the bottom line is they're now migrating to Instagram. Are you training your students how to use case presentation, video clips on IGTV and such? Because that is, at least from my perspective, that offers something that we don't really get. Students from other institutions can watch what other institutions are doing. Students within the institution don't necessarily see the cases that others are doing except in case presentation. Do you think that's going to impact on the level and quality of dental education?
I think eventually has to. However, right now, I don't see room built on the curriculum for that to be part of it.
Okay. All right.
So I think there are ways that one can start teaching those skills. And I guess that the first way is by implement them yourself. So, and I guess that's where it comes to the conversation, the podcast and all these things. I cannot teach my residents how to have a podcast or communicate on how they can use social media as part of their educational component, because that's not what CODA describes that I have to be teaching a prosthodontic resident, right? Plus, there are so many like trillion things that I have to teach that there is probably no time for that. But that doesn't mean that I cannot expose them to ways that they can leverage their knowledge and build other educational avenues for their friends, their classmates, their colleagues, their patients. And many people do this when they graduate. And actually the American College of Prosthodontics is now doing a very good job trying to bring that in every annual session, in actually every meeting that we have. We have at least one session in which they talk about how to integrate social media, how to utilize that tool as an educational part, because people think about social media only as engaging and like, oh, connect with others. But actually you're getting an inside view of their personal life through their cell phone. You're that close to them. And I think it's important that we learn how to use that effectively. Definitely for education. Personally, what I do is I use that as an extra avenue to connect. Whether my residents feel closer to me or not, because I have a presence in social media that they can know not only what I do during my 8 to 7 time at school, but also what they do on my free time. Whatever, like if I eat pizza on Saturdays, every Saturday I make pizza, so they know that by now. So whether they know that or they know that I have an interview every Monday, I think they make them, going back to the point of empathy. I feel that if they're closer to me and I'm closer to them, they're going to be more willing to learn from me because they're going to know who I am and whether I want the best for them or not.
So I think truly, I mean, you just raised an interesting point, I think quite valid. you're personalizing your presence, which I think as an educator is pivotal. You can't sort of have that barrier between who you are, what you do, and the student who has to sort of be a supplicant rather than being a interactive with you on whatever level. It could be personal. They see something that you do, it's a hobby, and they relate. Obviously, the more you become integrated on a personal level, the more they're willing to learn from you, and you create that bond. I'm curious, how many of them watch your podcast? Do you have any idea?
I hope all of them. I don't know. I'll kill them if they don't. They better all of them.
All right,
no,
you got enough, man. All right, we're going to move on into, this was a paper, Meaningful Integration of Educational Technology in Postgraduate Programs, Problem, Solution, and Results. So what was interesting was the graphic, which I guess probably nobody can read. So it's faculty-resident interaction, team morale. Okay, that's what I wanted to see. Team morale. So leadership, team building. Go. It's your turn now.
Okay. So this paper actually was a result of the work that we did through COVID. As I mentioned before, we transitioned all of our courses, and there was one big component of that for us, which was the social and personal, emotional well-being of our community. And our community is not only our students, it's our faculty as well. So we really utilize or try to leverage the things that we already have. And one very simple tool that everyone has access to it is WhatsApp for groups, or whatever you utilize for group chat. We build group chats. I had group chats with my residents. I have group chat with the faculty. So to begin with, we already felt closer. Mm-hmm. We also did, as I said, photo challenges. So every day, everybody will have to send a photo of whatever they were doing in quarantine with something funny, and then nominated somebody else. So just keep the thing rolling so people will felt closer regardless of the fact that we were physically distant. So in terms of leadership, I think it's important that one takes, in these situations of emergency, and I guess I've been put through my life, even from the personal perspective. When I was a teenager, I lived floating, that we lost everything with my family. We have to move. So I had multiple opportunities in life that I've been taken out of my comfort zone dramatically, like completely change environment and start all over. So I think I have to start my life a few times by now. And one of the ones was when I moved to the US, not knowing anyone, not having any family, any friends here, just starting a new life. So having an opportunity to, one, reinvent themselves and utilizing the toolbox that you come with. I think we all have those tools that we feel like, oh, this is my tool for my family. This is my tool for my kids. This is my tool for my work. I don't believe so. I think that we have a toolbox that we could really utilize for all. And I think that's what sharing and caring and being generous means. If you know you have a skill in one aspect of your life, why wouldn't you share it with others in any other aspect if they could benefit from?
It's interesting. When I spoke to Irina, she said something similar. Do you think the immigrant experience makes a difference in the quality of what you try to provide students? That was something that Irina pointed out. She talked about, let me see if I can remember this. She described leaving Romania as, it wasn't just a journey. How did she put it? It was almost like beginning again. Like she set herself the goal. I'm leaving Romania, I'm going to Boston, and this is sort of like, I know she was on tenure track and all of that kind of stuff, but she described it in a strange way. I'm having trouble remembering it. But it was if, this is my chance. This is my goal. I'm leaving my country, and now I'm giving myself a period of time that I have to be successful within this construct. Did you feel the same thing when you left Venezuela?
Absolutely. And very innocently now looking back, if I had to do it again the way I did, I'll be freaking out. I will be like having, I don't know. I don't even know how I did what I did. I guess out of innocence, being very naive, not even knowing what I was getting myself into. Sort of like with a plan, but with a very loose plan. Mm-hmm. And I'm a very structured person. I really go with firm plans. I'm a planner by nature, and everything that I've done in life, I feel, has been through well-managed planning. But anything outstanding has been completely out of plan.
Interesting.
So,
Sorry?
Yeah. No, trying to keep that in mind whenever I face a challenging situation, I try to remind myself, okay, wait, I know you don't have a plan. I have this self-conversation. Okay, myself, I know you don't have a plan. I know you're uncomfortable, but remember, everything every time that something magnificent happened or anything outstanding in your life had come out of a challenge, a difficulty, a chaos, a no plan situation. So just jump, let go.
Let's go.
And I think that's what happened when I moved here.
Really. I want to get into the international dentist, but this was, what was this? This was the program.
Yeah,
Oh, this
that's
was
the Harvard Macy.
Harvard Macy.
Mhm.
This is, I was looking at, where was it? Course objectives. So it was evaluate how, I don't know who can read this, but evaluate how adults learn and incorporate evidence-based teaching strategies. Elements of effective curriculum design, which is another thing that you obviously do with Panache. Leadership styles. Again, not everybody can be the same leader. You have to learn to fit it into your lifestyle or to your personality. Organizational planning, skills to deal productively with conflicting responses. This is a brilliant program. And this is pretty much what you and Irina are trying to do at Tufts. Is that correct? You've got mini residencies, but she has an entire year. Is this replicating, or are they totally different in the objectives of this particular program?
Objectives in the dental program are a little bit different. And if you want, when we finish, I have a slide of our program so I can share the screen with you and show you. It's custom, of course. This is a framework, and it's a framework that all of the ones organizing the program were familiar with. So we are trying to extrapolate the best or the most effective practices to dental education. So that's, I guess, the main objective.
Okay. Now, this is like the big finale, right? But it's going to go on for a while.
My baby.
This is your baby. All right. Let me see where we are here. I don't want to face cast. Yes, this is what I'm looking for. Okay, just to go through this briefly, because it's the other one that does it. Look at all these people. You spoke to Irina, Hugh Campos, all of these people. I don't know if I can play it, because usually it's very tinny. But let's start off with this. The stories from fellow dentists who left their homelands, which of course is part of the thing, because we're talking about people who have immigrated, to develop their professional careers in the United States. Journey to success, failures that led them there, and you do this on a weekly basis. Why did you start doing this?
Because I wanted to share.
Because you wanted to share. Okay, so here we go. This was Carlos Pereira. This is how you set it up. So first of all, you've got this great microphone and the beautiful blue background. Who helped you get this going? I mean, unfortunately, we're not looking at you in the room because your partner has like 12,000 guitars all around the room. And that was very exciting.
I could move my camera around. I don't know oh no, my camera is on the back. I could do that later. I'll send you the picture so you can add it somewhere, like what's happening on the other stuff, on the other part of the room.
No worries. So when you started doing this, how did you design this?
Well, again, quarantine adventures. I had this idea of I've been a podcast consumer myself for a while now. I would say probably 10 years, even before, since Venezuela, when podcast was nothing and there were like only a handful of podcasts out there. I'm a listener. I like to listen in general, and I consume a lot of Audible products. Even with Audible and books, I do listen to a lot of audiobooks. So it wasn't really something completely new to me. I always felt like with my desire to share and my desire to reach, I wanted to either do videos or trying to leverage that skill somewhere, somehow. So in my runnings in the morning, I'm a runner. So in my runnings in the morning, it's what I have all my ideas. So I always leave the notebook right next to the door, because when I come back from running, I have all these ideas, crazy. Right. So the idea of the podcast came out, and of course, different topics, as every run will bring a different topic to my head. And then one day, boom, I can remember exactly where I was, what the weather was, what the humidity was, because that idea of I have to do a podcast called International Dentist. And I started thinking, I know all these amazing, incredible professionals with wonderful stories from all over the world. Like I could spend a lifetime just listening to their stories. And I do when we talk socially, if this is people I know. Right. Like there will be so many stories that will be wonderful for others to listen to. And when I was coming to this country, it would have been wonderful for me to know what the paths for a dental career for a dentist in this country will be. Right. So then, of course, I started looking at what is necessary to do podcasting. I did a couple of courses online on how to podcast and everything that it was necessary. And luckily, I have my partner who is also helping me with production. And we both share this thing of quality. So we said, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to let's see what's the investment financially, time wise, and all that. And we just did. We started recording back in, I think, May.
Right.
So it's been fun.
So what I want to do is actually show, I was just trying to, where am I? Let's go back. You use Buzz Notes, if I'm not mistaken, right? Is that what you're using for the system?
I use Buzzsprout for software.
What?
Buzzsprout.
Buzzsprout.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Mm-hmm.
I thought
Yeah.
Buzzsprout, Buzznote. Let's look at your Facebook page. There we go. Okay, so this is what you're your own marketer. It's pretty impressive. You've designed all this, right?
Yeah, I'm my own everything. I use Canva for designing of everything that you see up there. I design my own website. So if you go www.theinternationaldentist.com.
Okay, let me find no, hold on. Let's go to okay, new tab. So www, the international dentist.
Yes, theinternationaldentist.com.
I can't type anymore either. Can't pronounce words. The internationaldentist.com. All right. And voila. Whoa, look at this.
That's the website.
So all your episodes. All right.
Yes.
Look at this. This is lovely. There she is.
There she is.
There she is. Okay, so but you told me you were doing something different. Season 1 is you did 6 episodes. You have more coming up?
Yes. So I release 1 episode every week, and every season is going to be 12 episodes. So season 1 is going to be primarily dentists that came from their countries for either education or to try to get a license here. Mm-hmm. And they decided to stay and they never went back to their home countries. Season 2, I'm interviewing people that actually went back to their countries or to other countries to practice dentistry.
Okay.
So we're having conversations on how the American education was impactful in their careers, whether that's something that it changed their career path tremendously, and things that they learn and challenges going to other places. So it's been fun. And then every season we'll bring different topics. So we're layering different seasons, and every season will be 12 episodes. We're about 12 episodes.
Wow. Boy, you got all kinds of spare time, kiddo. This is this is amazing. My goodness. Who are these, like Hugh Campos you just mentioned before, correct?
So yeah, I have actually a few of those. Pretty much season 1 is being all friends. Okay. And people that I know closely or I work closely with. Dr. Hugo Campos, he is the interim director of the radiology, oral maxillofacial radiology department at Tufts. Carlos Parra is a periodontist. He finished a residency program the same year as I did pros, and now he's the assistant director of the periodontal program in Texas. Dr. Marcelo Freire, he's a periodontist, and he dedicates to mostly research. Roya Samparsa is a prosthodontist, and she does a lot of leadership. So I'm really trying to bring people with different backgrounds. Dr. Alexander Bendayan, he is the Dean of Technology at BU and assistant chair at BU. So I'm really trying to get people with different environments, backgrounds, different age as well, but they all have a very amazing story that I'm really willing to share with all.
Well, this is amazing. First of all, just the production values alone are staggering. Wow. Jeez. This has been an experience. It's been awesome. I mean,
it's been fun.
as I say, it was like talking to Irina. She's what, 28, 29?
No, we're the same age. We're the same age.
Why do I think she's 28?
Because she looks like 20 forever.
Yeah, she's going to be, with the hair and everything, she's going to be 20 forever. Absolutely. Again, what I find incredible is that you're the beginning of your career, really. Like, you've been doing this for what, 5 to 8 years?
5 years. After, yeah.
And you've done this much, and now you've got, well, I don't know, 30 left to do, maybe, whatever. You said one thing that I found interesting. At the end, you set yourself a 10-year plan, correct?
I always do. I do 5-year, 10-year plan. And this past 10 years, that this is actually my first decade in the US. I will make that anniversary in January.
Nice.
So I think these 10 years were preparing me. So I took it as a preparatory phase. It included my residency, my first year teaching, navigating the system, and all that. So I'm excited for what the next 10 years are going to bring.
Right. I'm curious.
Because,
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
I'm
go
just
ahead.
curious. COVID. COVID is like a landmark time. It's a milestone. Okay, COVID is horrible. COVID is just disgusting. We can't travel. We can't do this. It's completely stagnated everything in our lives, right? You can reach out with Zoom, you can do whatever, but it is literally a stagnant, fallow period in the life of educators, in the life of clinicians. Probably another 2 years before things return to normal. So,
Mhm.
what is your projection? Like, it's going to return, you're going to have to cope with the next 18 to 24 months. But over the course of the next 5 years, what do you anticipate?
I want to challenge the assumption of stagnation, and I want to say yes, it's physical stagnation, but we cannot let the mind to be stagnant.
Yeah.
So now more than ever, we need to let the mind flows and flows outside the boundaries of our houses, because the mind doesn't get COVID. We can still be safely sharing.
Interesting.
So what I perceive is that in the next 24 months or 18 months like that, until we get through a more normal stage, when we go back, we will not be the same. It will be a shame if we are the same. So do everything that you need to do. And I advise this to everyone out there listening, everything that you need to do in this period of time. And I know people that are in practice are having a harder time to do so because they're busier now, worrying about many things. Even any change that you want to implement in your practice, anything that you always thought, I wish I had the time or I wish I'll slow down to do. This is the time. The time is now. It's in front of our heads and it's free. We're all getting this opportunity handled to us worthwhile. And I think it will be a shame if we're not in a different place, but I'm sure we will not. And I'm sure that the result of that work and effort that you put to push things forward in this period of time, which will feel heavy because you feel you're navigating against the tide. At the same time, you're hoping for an opportunity to connect with others that are sharing the same. So if anyone out there feels like me and you want to continue to push this forward and don't let the mind get stagnant, please reach out. I'm always looking to get involved and communicate and share with others. So
you have a beautiful soul, you have a beautiful spirit, and you are the epitome of positivity, which is outstanding under the circumstances. I mean, you're the perfect educator. You truly are. I know Irina as well. I mean, I still try to understand her article, and that's only one, and she's written zillions. I can't thank you enough for this, Gabriella. This was a phenomenal insight into what dentistry is and will become, because there are people like you who are going to lead it. And how lucky are the students that are coming up right now, that people like you, and you're contributing through all of the associations. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This was wonderful. I truly enjoyed myself. I'm going to start listening to the podcast. I hope everybody does. And we will talk again. Thank you for the time. I really appreciate it. Have a
thank you
lovely
for
day.
your time.
Enjoy
Thank
Boston, because Boston's the best city in the world.
I love Boston. If you haven't, I know you went to school here, right?
School for 3 years.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I ever left. It is magnificent. It is.
It's a wonderful city. And this is a great thing you're doing. And we spoke before about it, but I want to just big shots to you and all the efforts that you have been doing over these few months to bring people together and to open this window of opportunity for others to share, to collaborate, to communicate. This is what dentistry is going to be about. The dentistry of the future, the education of the future has to be this.
Yes.
There's no other way. And we will do it.
You are something else. That's so fantastic. Thank you for the privilege. Really, this was, I feel uplifted. I guess that's what I feel right now.
That's my goal. That's
goal. Absolutely.
That's my goal. That's my goal. I always tell my students, I say it at the end of my podcast, I'm always here for you. So I'm here for everyone, for sharing, for cheering, for smiling, for bringing dentistry to the place we deserve. I think we all deserve this, and education is just an extension of it.
God bless. Thank you so much. You have a wonderful
Thank you.
day. Okay. Be well. Thank you. Bye.
You too.